Meagan, hi, welcome to the Female Startup Club podcast.
Hi, I'm so excited to be here.
I'm so excited to be here too after just seeing you yesterday. Love that for us.
I know, how serendipitous.
How serendipitous indeed. For everyone listening, we were meeting in real life yesterday because Meagan was hosting a beautiful event at a beautiful house in Sydney. And you're back in Melbourne now. And we're going to talk about the event, but maybe a little bit later when we get into kind of marketing and launch stuff and activations. But I love this for us. It was nice to meet in real life. I've missed those interactions.
It really is. And I think that's why I'm so excited that events are back, activations are back, because you really get to experience such, I guess, more meaningful relationships and like that warmth.
100%. I feel like we're all kind of a little bit exhausted from the Zooms and the calls, seeking out RIL activations or events or catch-ups so we can kind of get back into the offline world. For anyone who might not know yet who you are, how do you like to introduce yourself?
Formerly the co-founder and general manager of STRAAND, and STRAAND's a scalp care range that was recently launched around 7 months ago. In Australia, we've launched via D2C and a key retailer, Adore Beauty, and we're just launching in the US at the moment, and UK, EU, and working through some of our Southeast Asia and China plans. So we're very busy, and that's what kind of keeps me awake at night.
The global girl.
Let's hope so.
Very global. What were you doing before you started STRAAND?
So earlier on in my career, actually my first proper job, I was a makeup artist. So I worked at MAC when I was 16 for quite a few years. And then I went into publishing advertising. So I worked in the commercial departments for brands like Elle, Harper's, Cosmo, at Bauer for quite some time. And then over at News Corp for Vogue, Vogue Living, GQ. And then I spent some time actually advising for beauty brands and doing more brand strategic work, but very much in the commercial and creative space. So what does a brand look like? Where does it fit? The R&D, is there space for it? And as part of that, I also have become really heavily involved in another brand called Three Warriors, which is a certified organic self-tan, another local one called TBH Skincare. So that's been a lot of fun. And then I met my co-founders for STRAAND about 2 years ago now. And then here we are.
Oh my gosh. And then here we are. Something that I was asking you yesterday and something that I was curious about from an outsider kind of observing what you've done so far is that, you know, you launched 7 months ago, but you're already having such great success. You're already launching overseas. You're in these major retailers. You are having these beautiful events. You've just done your first pre-seed raise. And I was asking you like, but how? And you were saying, you know, there's a lot of work in the years leading up to before you even get to starting the brand, which of course I understand. But I would love to go back to like the meeting of minds, I guess, with you and your co-founders to understand like, was it always scalp care? Were you just meeting and being like, let's start a brand together? Or what was the insight? What was the kind of like, let's do this moment and those early days of discussing a brand?
Definitely. It was always scalp care. I don't think it was positioned as scalp care at that stage. It was still quite early on, but two of my business partners, Tim and Jeremy, had done quite a lot of market research into anti-dandruff. With that understanding of the category, that's when I then became involved. And they're like, okay, we think there might be something in anti-dandruff. Having really sensitive skin myself, suffered from it. I'm like, there 100% is. And then we went through the journey of what actually is this? And that's when scalp care really came forward, and my love of beauty, understanding a lot of beauty consumers, particularly from those early years as being a makeup artist. It was like, that's what was missing, is actually a love for a brand and a product that existed in that space. So that's where we started the journey. And obviously there was a lot more to it. We worked with Nick, who is also a co-founder. So we've really gone through, and we've got co-founders who are really great at what they do. And Nick is manufacturing. So he worked in manufacturing for over 25 years in Australia, working on formulating and developing some of the biggest brands that Australia has then exported. So when it comes to ingredients, product, market research, understanding, we really, I guess, had a lot of insight to how to build and formulate the best product, but also where clinical data was coming from a lot of the key ingredient suppliers. So Strand is very, very much based on science, the formulas. Then the brand itself, whilst it has that science undertone, is more consumer-led. Sarah, our fifth co-founder, had previously worked and co-founded brands such as Sand and Sky, which again was, an incredible and is an incredible Australian brand exported overseas. So when it comes to retail and retail conversations, Sarah's very on the pulse there.
Right. So it's kind of like there are 5 of you. You each have a very clear lane that you work within, and you kind of all work in harmony. I actually have people ask me sometimes, like, how do I find a co-founder? How do you actually find those kind of people? And I'm wondering, in your case, it's 5 people. So that's a nice size of people who have come together. Like, were you like actively looking for a co-founder, or had you just met these people through a network and started having conversations and it organically happened? Or how did you actually kind of come together and be like, let's do this together? Were you like cherry picking the best people and being like, let's bring you into the conversation? Or did you just all know each other? You were friends and, it happened around a table kind of thing?
No, so there wasn't a friendship previously. In Three Warriors, my other business that I work with Corbin, the founder on, we also didn't have a friendship previously either. He brought me into his business as an advisor and to do some strategic work. Now we have a really, really beautiful friendship, but that just really helped to understand boundaries and ways of working, which was fantastic. So he actively was looking for somebody who could do what I do. And I'm like, okay, let's fill this out. And then it became a lot more meaningful. So I became a lot more involved in the business. And similarly with Tim, Sarah, Jeremy, and Nick, there was perhaps previous friendships through networks of having worked together. Jeremy may have worked with Nick in a previous company, or Sarah may have worked with Jeremy. He's really good at bringing people together, but they were actively, I guess, based on skill set and what was needed to make this business, as best it could be. So it's like, what's something that is a desirable attribute? Having worked with friends before, I think you can go into it with the absolute best intention and you can have the best friendship. That doesn't necessarily then translate to a good working relationship. So if this was something that I was looking to say do again, I would always avoid the friendship route, because your relationship exists somewhere else. Whereas when your relationship is started through business, you know how each other operate, you know how you communicate. A lot of the times at work, I can dot point, bullet points, quite short, but not through any other reasons than efficiency and just to get it quickly. In a friendship, that might be seen as blunt. And then in a friendship, I'm so much warmer and, we'll sit and waffle on a phone for 2 hours if there's time. So that could be a really jarring relationship. So yeah, I think, again, you need to consider what's right for you and what's right for your brand. But I would go into it with as much understanding of what that might mean. And if you are going in with friendship with a friend, I would lay it all out up front, even expectations, like where do we think this will go? What's the exit plan? What if something goes wrong and we don't want to be in this anymore? What do we then do?
And what's the plan B if one person doesn't want to be in the business anymore, or there is a fallout? What's the plan? Like, what happens in that case? God forbid it happens, but what does happen? And I think that's a great point to kind of have all the tough conversations. It's kind of like that, those books, they're kind of like silly books that, you're getting married, so these are all the conversations you should ask your partner. It's exactly the same, really.
Oh, and you don't want to have them because you're so excited. You're just so set on a vision that it will succeed. So you don't want to entertain that. So I think that's been a benefit of going into business with people that a business relationship exists, because that's the expectation. And there's kind of nothing to lose to a degree in terms of the relationship. Of course, you always want to keep beautiful business relationships, but it's not like a long-standing friendship that you could potentially damage if it doesn't go the way that you both want it to. And when business isn't going well, it's high pressure on everyone. And when it is going well, it's great. But yeah, just something, I guess, to be mindful of.
Very true. Something we love to talk about, especially early on in the episode, is the money piece and how you kind of get from wherever you started to wherever you are now. And I know that you've just recently raised $2 million in pre-seed investment with Unilever Ventures, but I was reading that you had all kind of put in your own capital to get started and get kind of to this point, 6 months in, 7 months in. What did you need to invest into the brand to get to this point, and how were you thinking about capital from the beginning?
So I think early on it was getting a runway to getting it to a proof of concept to be able to get an investor in. Sometimes, depending on the skill sets in the team, that can be a lot more cost effective. There may be things that people can actually do, and it's a good consideration for who you're founding with, depending on what way you want to go down. If you're self-funding and you know that design is critical, brand is critical, maybe you bring in a graphic designer, a really strong creative lead as that founding team. Similar to sales, getting that. So maybe you bring in a strong salesperson. So I think that's always something to consider as well, depending on how you get there. We actually raised with Unilever prior to launching. So we announced it in January, but it was pre-seed investment. So that was based off all the work that we had done to date, the formulations, the product, obviously in all the vessels, the seen, smelled, touched, felt, gone through intense R&D, that the products do what they say they're going to do. But yes, so that's definitely helped and accelerated our launch.
Absolutely. That's so exciting. Congratulations, by the way. I guess for you, it's like old news since that happened 7 months ago. But for everyone else who's just seen the news, congratulations. It's very exciting to read about it. So how did it go then for fundraising? Like, you just kind of knocked on their door specifically, or you started knocking on hundreds of doors to have these conversations? And was it you leading the fundraising process, or someone else in the business, or a collective kind of collaborative effort?
Yeah, I would say it was definitely a collective collaborative effort. It was led predominantly by Jeremy and Sarah in our business at different phases. Then it was probably led by other people, depending on where their piece was. In terms of Unilever, look, we were really surprised. We were pleasantly surprised and very happy. We were working with a company called Lemperi Wells, and they facilitated the introduction and oversaw the deal. They'd previously, I believe, worked with other Australian brands to help them gain that funding and early investment.
So, is that company, what was it called, sorry?
So it's Lemperi Wells.
Lemperi Wells. Is that like a broker for investors?
There are brokers, definitely. So Lemperi Wells Capital, which is head by Alice Wells, and she does quite a lot of the deal making there. They can do quite a few numerous different things. Traditionally, Lemperi Wells are a leading global investment bank in consumer M&A.
You start the process of fundraising, you successfully raise, you are then focused on your launch, I imagine. So what were you doing kind of in the lead up to launch, already being a VC-backed business at that point?
I think the thing with our mentality too is we're very performance orientated, coming from, some self-funded brands as well. Like a dollar has to work as hard as that dollar can work. So coming up to the launch, it was looking at just getting that timing right in when we could hire. We couldn't hire too early. We couldn't hire too late. A lot of the runway to launch was definitely getting market ready. So everything from, brand assets, website, social, shoot collateral, packaging, operations and logistics is a really fun space of business to be in at the moment, especially during the COVID period. So we launched about 6 months later than we wanted to. So that was where a lot of our key focus was. We ended up launching mid last year, and it was just very much getting everything ready, even from collateral, like your mailer bags, what 3PL are we going to use? Are we going to use a 3PL? Market analysis, negotiating all of our contracts with different stakeholders. So who do we have within the business, but then who do we need outside of the business, and who are we comfortable with, and who do we have confidence in as an agency partner or as a small sole trader to kind of help us hit our goals. So that, was definitely where we're spending a lot of our time. And then also our corporate internal, we're setting up a new business. So there's everything that goes with that, like HR documents, brand guidelines, bringing people on board. What is our culture? What are our brand values? What do we expect? I'm a big believer in, clearly communicating what is expected in an environment so that everyone has the opportunity to succeed. And then there's hiring. So it's like what headcount are we hiring? Who do we need to hire and at what point and where is that critical? So it's the interview process. It's searching and looking for talent. And again, your team is, especially in the early days where it's just a few of you, so integral to bringing the brand to life. So that was, quite a bit of my time last year.
What was your first hires to actually kind of launch the brand? Like, was it marketing? Was it performance, paid specialists? Even though I guess one of your co-founders has that background, like who were the people who you needed to really get it out there?
I was quite lucky that during my career, I've had a lot of exposure to all different parts of business, particularly over indexing in marketing, advertising and branding. That helped when we came to look at, okay, what do we need from a marketing perspective? But we did need a really strong, solid creative lead that I could kind of work with, bounce off, not spend days writing briefs and sending iterations of changes and losing kind of all of that time. So we had to be in a really good operating rhythm. And thankfully, earlier on in the process, I'd been introduced to Shani, who is our now creative lead and did all those wonderful Sweat House things that you saw yesterday. And she was working with us in a freelance capacity. She'd recently gone freelance and that was her intention of what she wanted to do as a business. And then when it came to doing our corporate branding, which I think is really important, by the way, especially if you want to attract talent and, inspire people. So rather than a boring LinkedIn post, I was like, okay, let's write some cool copy. We did some fun GIFs. And as we were putting the roll out for a graphic designer, she kind of tapped me on the shoulder and she was like, so can I apply for this? And I was like, oh, I thought you'd never ask. So that was a big win.
The heavens aligned.
Literally. And I didn't want to put any pressure on her either, as she just started doing her freelance after working as a creative lead at another really big Australian beauty brand and had big teams. And so it was just really nice. Like, we're both kind of like, do you want to? And she was like, yeah, I'm in. I'm definitely in.
Dancing around the idea. Will you be my graphic designer? Cute. I love that. Oh my gosh. Okay, so you hired a really strong creative lead who could kind of help you with the marketing launch, social media, events, activations, look really sleek and professional at every touch point, emails, website. Packaging. Yes, absolutely. I mean, she's ticking all those boxes. Everything looks very schmick.
Thank you.
How does the launch go? What were you doing that was working to really get the word out there at the very beginning?
Back to the launch now. Like, oh my God, what do we do? It's like the whiplash. So within that, we did another critical hire, which was Emily, and she's in affiliate, our head of affiliate and influencers, which she has a lot of experience in there too. And then we also hired Anna, who's content and video editor. So we knew, and I knew from the very beginning, especially with my publishing background, that I want STRAAND to be more of a publisher mindset. I want it to be very digital first. I want to be in a content creation capacity. I love creative. I almost want, and we are bringing to life our own mini creative studio within the brand. And at first, in the early days, we have to be quite tight with our comms and what we're talking about. We only get, X amount of opportunity to make an impact or to talk to somebody. So you've got to keep it very tight. And even if you think you're being repetitive, just come back. And that's why solid comms guidelines are so important, because it stops you from going on a tangent as well, especially if you're a creative person like I am. I'm like, oh, this is pretty, let's go over here. And it's like, no.
Yeah, let's go over here. And then that's shiny, let's go over there. Story of my life.
And it's like, come back. You've got to keep it, what's integral to your brand. So around launch, we had this team, which is fantastic internally. So content creation, super important. And then we also have a really strong PR partner. So I'd worked with Jessie from Hive previously, on a few different things, and we've just got a really great working relationship, which I love. So around the launch, I'm always mindful that we have to, I guess, punch above our weight. We have to look and appear so much bigger than what we probably are. So we've got our work set out for us. And I think the way that brands can do that effectively and play in arenas that, are probably much bigger than they are and have brands that are much bigger than they are in them is to be creative. And the more creative that you can be and the more clever you can be, the more that it will hit, the more that it will resonate, and the more cut through that you will get. And it's easy to say, it's sometimes a lot harder to execute, but we always as a team kind of come back to that and really try and challenge it. So around our launch period, we had a few delays and we ended up just launching with the shampoo. So it was critical to get to launch at this point. But it ended up working really well because it meant that we could have this hero moment with the shampoo and really spotlight it. Emily, with her experience with influencers, had worked with a lot of influencers who did this really good ROI, and that was during the earlier days of performance media and influencer really working. So we tested, say, one or two, but then the other was we really honed in on beauty authorities. So authorities in our niche. I always look at things, whether it be in campaigns, marketing strategy, even in business. There's like this theory, and I probably won't recite it right, but it's about the domino effect. Like, what is that one domino that you can push and it will then influence all the others? So when we were going to market, it's like we don't have infinite budget, we don't have infinite resources to make impact. So who do we need to get buy-in from really early on? And if we get their buy-in and if we know that they love our brand and they will be advocates for our brand and they trust our product, that will then make any conversation or any marketing activity that we do next a lot easier or compound and have a lot more weight and social proofing to it. So I went really hard with specific authorities. We worked with them on a longer period because they're still what I would consider quite expensive. So rather than just a once-off, it was, a 3-month period, and that was great from a cost positioning perspective. It also meant that like you were both partnering. So there was a lot more depth to the relationship and then leaning in and getting to understand the brand. And we work for people too that we know don't do much pay to play unless they genuinely love the brand. So their audience also know that of them as well. So then they know that if they're saying they love it and they want to do it, yes, they need to make an income, but they wouldn't do it if they didn't like it or if it didn't work or if it didn't do what they were saying. And one person that we went with locally here was Hannah English, for example, and she's a pharmaceutical scientist. She's incredibly clever and she's great at educating her audience, and she shares so much knowledge on her channel about the science and the performance. And she was really integral to having buy-in early because that helped with the credentials of our brand as, a serious science brand, even though we are bold and fun and playful and cheeky and trying to remove the stigma of the category. We work and the products work. So that was, I guess, the launch plan, and we did it over 3 months. So we went shampoo, went kind of hard, heavy on a particular comms messaging. Then we went in with the serum, and then we went through with the shampoo and conditioner. So by phasing those product launches, it helped keep newness, it helped keep buzz over that kind of 3 to 4 month period, which I think was part of the reason why we had so much success with press. But then the other part was it was actually interesting, and all of the kind of R&D that we'd done before in the white space. As part of that with Hannah, I think it was the serum launch, so this was the 2nd or the 3rd month, we did a skinification of hair virtual forum. So back in my advertising days, a way that we would bring, potential clients in at, say, like a Vogue, is you would always invest in research pieces. So what research piece do they potentially not get access to that's going to be really meaningful, that's going to help influence how they connect with their consumers in that kind of marketing capacity? And on a really small level, I was like, let's do that with the skinification of hair. We know that digital online editors, they have SEO, they want to know where trends are going. They also have KPIs within their role of what kind of content they're putting out, not just what's like, cool or trending at the moment. So we went in and quantified all of the scalp and the scalp data. I think scalp detox was up 350% as an SEO term. quite a lot of things that were working that skinification of hair, and we put it on an invite. We sent it to them and invited them to come and learn more with Hannah English, myself, and Phoebe from The Blow, so that we could have a roundtable discussion on that. And it got a great turnout. The pickup was pretty good, but then this year in, I think, January, Pinterest Predicts put out the crown care as one of the big ones in skinification of hair, and all of a sudden all of these press are calling our PR and they're like, is Meagan available to come in and talk about this? So it was maybe a bit early for them when it first happened, but it put and positioned us as a thought leader in the category and the space.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, a very long-term play there, but very worth it. I love that. That's so interesting. You know, obviously you're a funded brand. Your budget looks different to a bootstrap brand. And I know that we have a lot of listeners who are early stage, they're kind of solo founders, they're bootstrapping. And I'm wondering, like, when they listen to you speak and when they're listening to your story, if you were doing this business as a bootstrapped founder and you didn't have kind of a lot of budget to do all the things, what would you focus if you had to focus on just doubling down on one thing? Like, would it be the influencer side, or would it be the PR side, or what would you kind of go really hard on if you were kind of doing it solo?
It's really tricky because in the marketing mix, each channel compounds on each channel. So you kind of almost need to have every channel on. But in saying that, that's not always possible. So you need to focus your attention. I think it's very specific to the business, the category, and what they're doing. But I always look at things as like, what's your high return value and hours, and what's your low return value and hours. I think a lot of like bootstrap business can get really obsessed with Instagram, for instance. And it's like, I need to be on Instagram. I need to be posting 4 or 5 times a day. And then the amount of money that's going into making that content and that's doing that and the people to trauma, it's like, is that actually giving you a return? Is that shifting the dial? Like, is it actually that if you took all those hours that you were doing that, could you go into retails, get sales, and then use that money to kind of push into that? Things like the virtual event that we did, outside of the soft costs of obviously, you know, designing an invite, our PR agency, organizing the guest list, that was cheap. That was free. It was a virtual event, but it was using, I guess, my positioning and our relationships as thought leaders to add value. So it's like, I think if you're starting a brand, it's like, okay, well, where can you do an exchange to add value? Three Warriors, the other business that I'm in, is still self-funded, bootstrapped for years. Up until last year, we're still packing orders in the bottom of the house. Like, we get creative. And Corbin, as a founder, has such an incredible story and has incredible relationships with people that he gets a lot of in return just through his networking and his relationships. Influencers, I think, are an important part of the mix. They can be very expensive. The environment of gifting in exchange for product seems to have changed quite a lot, that there's generally a payment needed, even if it's just you want someone to review it. So I think I would go really tight on my community, friends, family, networks, my own personal brand, providing value, education, and just looking at ways that you can just get super creative. This example always plays out in my mind. I think it was Zoe Foster-Blake when she launched GoTo, sent the press release with everyone and stuck $5 on it and said, okay, if you have time doing this, now go buy yourself coffee.
I love that. That's great. I haven't heard that one before.
Really clever and just like creative. So even though we do have funding, we still try and think in this mindset, because our funding is there to help buy product, to put it in stores overseas. It's not like an infinite amount, and headcount also, obviously, as we're investing in all these channels. Still, with any of our marketing, I think always have that bootstrap mindset. Make brand loyalists. I've seen that work so well with Three Warriors. Corbs, bless him, was like literally just him in that business for 4 years, wearing every hat, and he would DM and just chat to people wearing the brand. And as part of that, Sonia Kruger started wearing it because he sent it to her makeup artist. Sonia Kruger wore the brand for years, loved it. We get a call from Sonia's manager, Lucy. She's like, Sonia loves your brand. She won't stop talking about it. She's been wearing it for years. Like, can you work together? And we're like, we don't think we can afford to work with you, as flattered as we are. And she's like, no, she just really loves your brand and wants to make it work. We've now been working with Sonia Kruger in a formal capacity for 1.5 years. Our brand has grown significantly. And because Sonia is such a diehard loyalist of the brand, she's like a salesperson. She goes into salons and she's like, oh, you should definitely stock this. And so does her manager, Lucy. Like, it's incredible. And I think those kind of relationships, whether they're paid or they're organic, will shift the dial because they love you, they love your brand, they're buying it, and they genuinely want to be on your team. It's very, very different to if you're paying somebody and they're like, okay, here's my one frame, that's my deliverable, catch.
Yes, very different. Yeah, I love this. I feel like the two takeaways that we just really need to like drill home here is, number one, figure out the things that you think you're doing that you think are important but actually aren't driving those results, and switch that to being, where are you getting results, and triple down on what that is, whether that's pounding the pavement to get retailers instead of focusing on Instagram or TikTok content that's not reaching any eyeballs, or whether it's, markets and speaking to customers and knowing that when you're there doing a demo, you can get someone to be excited and buy your brand versus, something that isn't driving results. And secondly, digging into who your VIP customers are. Find out who loves your brand. Find out who is excited and could potentially be a partner in a bigger capacity. I love that. That's two great takeaways. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. You summarize that perfectly.
Love that. I needed to summarize it for myself. I feel like I also needed to hear that because I can be guilty of doing the things that aren't driving the results, but thinking that it's still important, which it is. But as a solo founder and someone who's bootstrapping a brand, you just have to make tough calls sometimes and be like, you can't do it all.
No. So it's like, what is going to shift the dial? What's going to be your domino? Whether it be that day, that week, that project. Yeah.
Yes. Oh, I love that. What's the domino? That's a very good one. I'm going to put that on a Post-it. Something else I wanted to talk about, and I know we're kind of coming up on time, so we can touch on this quickly, is the event you hosted yesterday. It was a beautiful activation. You had so many nice moments within the activation overall. And we were talking about this before we started recording around how you were taking this kind of lean approach to creating this activation. Activations in today's world are expensive, but your approach was, well, let's bring in other female founders and kind of collab together to, mix resources, I guess, and put on this amazing thing. And so I'd love to just hear a little bit about your strategy and tell us about that activation.
I think there's so much power in collaboration. In my past life, I would work on events for publishers like Gourmet Traveler Restaurant of the Year or Vogue Codes, and we would sell sponsorships to advertisers. They would all come in and they would have their spaces, and it would be activated on numerous different platforms. And towards the end of last year, I was just like, why are brands not doing that together, but just then actively being responsible for the hard costs? There's so many, again, punching above our weight, trying to be much bigger than what we are. There's so many things and so many creative ideas and so many reasons why we want to have meaningful interaction with our community, with our customers, with press, with creators. But again, it's expensive. And you see people doing it and you're like, oh, wow, like the standard is pretty high too. So it can be quite intimidating. So I just got thinking about this idea called Sweat House. I was like, wouldn't it be cool if we did something really fresh around the new year when we got started and we got moving, and you go in, you just have just a little feel-good workout, gets the endorphins, you come through, you get your roots freshed up, and what else lives in your day that looks like that? And I'm a huge beauty consumer. I use lots of different brands, and at different points throughout my day that I kind of interact with them. And then I have this beautiful relationship with Priscilla from Bang & Body and Kira Rumble from Habitual Beauty. And we'll share, support each other, give intros here or there when we need to. And I was like, well, they're part of my day. I use Bangin' in the shower. I use Habitual. I love their marine collagen. And I was like, why can't this exist? And then I was like, well, naturally it's outside, it's summer in Australia, you must wear your SPF, it's a non-negotiable. So then I thought of AB Lab. Okay, well, why don't we all get together? I kind of pitched them. I actually did a pitch deck of what my idea was, what the concept, what the opportunity for them was, and why they should buy in. So I first caught up for dinner with Priscilla. I, kind of just said, look, would this be of interest? She would love it, absolutely love it. And I was like, okay, cool, I'll follow through with the pitch deck. And I made it look really pretty. It's really important to have very, very good looking decks in anything that you do. And then we went out to a few of the other brands. We all got together and we're like, okay, what do you want out of this? Like, what's really important for your brand? How can we activate it? A fabulous PR partner, Hive, facilitated and helped bring it all to life. And that's where we narrowed it down. But the key reason for this, well, actually there was a few, but it was really looking at marketing efficiencies. So if we all work together, we can pull resourcing. We have a design lead. We do it under a sweat house. So it's very even for each brand to be involved. It's not necessarily a lead brand, even though we're leading it in terms of execution, deliverables and implementation, which again, some of the brands that we went to, like a Bang is a lot more established than we are. They have a huge EDM database, a huge community. So that was a little bit of, the exchange. It's like, okay, if you're going to come in and do this, we'll do the creative legwork. And I also know they're drowning and they're so busy at the moment and have heaps going on. So it's like making it easy for them just to say yes as well, and removing friction and removing hurdles. So that's what we said. We'll take it on. We'll come up with a concept. We'll come up with the idea, how we'll execute it, the different touch points. We just want your buy-in and then your activation to help facilitate. So we did it, and we will continue to do it and looking at it as a full marketing concept. So we did a pre-sweat consumer competition, which we drove to an email database sign up. So each brand shared it on all of their socials. They shared it on their EDM marketing list. This means we have a pooled reach across the 4 brands. If we were to go to a publisher, or if we'll go to somebody to pay for that type of access or that exposure, it wouldn't be feasible. Like, we couldn't afford to do that. But as a collective, we can all share. So we did that. We have the consumer comp, and then we had the activation, which was amazing. And to do an activation, look, you're looking at, if you're lucky, $50,000 for something of that caliber. By us working together, we're able to then share those costs because it was all cohesively styled, cohesively branded. It was very clear what was, shared costs and what we were doing there. Hive, our PR partner, also did a fabulous job of, reaching out to some other sponsors to help contribute to the event. That meant that we could have, I think we had around 45 people come through yesterday in 4 different sessions throughout the day and experience this phenomenal, day, a house that we all wanted to stay and live in.
Yes, we all wanted to move in immediately.
Don't know how many bottles of shampoo we need to sell for something like that, but I'll put it on a vision board. And then within that, it's obviously the group activity, and then there was like a nice little labyrinth where you could explore, and you went to AB and they did a skin check. They obviously went through the different product ranging. You came to STRAAND and we did a dry blow bar using the lactic acid as a product breakdown from the serum. You walked through to a habitual beauty. Actually, a lot of people ran there straight after the workout session because it was quite hot. And you had these beautiful marine collagen smoothies. And then when you go outside to Bang & Body, they had these lymphatic drainage massage stations. And, even for Bang, it was really important that they were teaching people how to do it rather than having it done to them. So you went away and you're like, oh, I learned something. Like, that's really cool.
I actually did feel that. I had that exact reaction. Oh, that was interesting. I'm glad I know how to do that now.
Because it's like you can add value in so many ways. And so many people, I think, particularly in media, they're really interesting people and they're really inquisitive and they want to learn things. So it's helping to facilitate that journey as well, which I think makes those moments more meaningful. We had the brand founders there, myself and Kira. Unfortunately, Priscilla, well, not unfortunately for her, I guess, was on her honeymoon in Europe. So she's having a great time. But Kira and I were there. We got to, chat to people and, what do you love about this? What do you not love? What are you loving at the moment? And just hear and experience things together. So That was fantastic and that was really meaningful. And then there's obviously all the content that will come from it that all the brands have been able to capture, which again, we then put through all of our different marketing channels. We're now digging a little bit deeper, and this will help form our comms plan for the next month is, reasons to sweat, what sweat means for dandruff, how do you manage sebum, and then going a little bit deeper even to the root refresh and how you use that product. And now we've got content to help support it, messaging to help support it, but then buy-in, which we can then, I guess, continue to reinforce over the next few weeks for the brand positioning in that space.
Gosh, I just love it. Obviously, so much went into this event, but what I also love is the takeaway that it doesn't have to be this big $50,000 event. You can also be thinking, how can I do this on a small scale? How can I get together some other female founders locally in my area and host a beautiful tea party or brunch or, massage parlor or whatever it might be that's complimentary and suitable to all brands involved, and still get some of this amazing content and reach and exposure and inviting interesting influencers and editors and people in the media space to come along and experience your brand, but just on a smaller level, or even things like just IG collab posts, finding brands, doing a bundle, putting a giveaway together, whatever it might be. I think the takeaway here is you can do this at any level and with any budget, truly. And it's just about thinking, putting your collaboration hat on and being what can I come up with? What's a creative idea that I can do? And maybe you start by thinking really big and then being okay, and how can I simplify that and do it on a $0 budget or $1,000 budget or whatever it might be.
Definitely. And even just looking at what's in your toolkit, it doesn't have to be money. Helps. But are you a great graphic designer? Do you have a really good network? And then if you're looking at what do I need to make this really successful? Who's somebody who has something that you don't have that you could exchange? It's hey, you might not have this at the moment, but I do. Let's do this together. We've got, and I'm not sure when this will go live, but we have a partnership coming up with Kira Rumble from Habitual for 3 Warriors. The exchange there is Kira came down to Tassie, was in our photographs. We paid for all the shoot. We'll give her some for her brand, and then we're also hosting a consumer comp that 3 Warriors as a brand is going to pay for and then share it with her brand. So that was the exchange there. It was Kira gave her time and she's also given her platform, and then in return, obviously there's a friendship and, it was that mutual wanting to support. But that was what was in the toolkit. It's we can do, this giveaway, which is going to be an amazing trip to go to Tasmania. And then, Kira, you've just visited, you were coming down anyway, let's do a shoot, and then we'll do all of this marketing investment. Your brand can then utilize and plug into that. She's heavily pregnant, about to have a baby. Amazing. She's okay, my next campaign's done. I can have a baby. So, yeah, I think the key thing is also what tools do you have that exist outside of just your budget?
Yeah, absolutely. Gosh, I love that. Thank you so much. Yeah, oh my gosh, I just love that. What is your kind of key piece of advice that you can leave us with?
I would always just say just always show up. So often I put myself in rooms, environments, places that my imposter syndrome would think, you don't really deserve to be there, or, oh, that's a bit intimidating. But just, always showing up. And it's if you just keep putting that one foot in front of the other, and if you say you are that, if you say I am a beauty founder and that's how I'm going to behave and that's who I'm going to show up as and that's what I'm going to do, the universe responds. And it just might be chipping away at it. It's what little skill sets do I need over the years to amass to get there? Yeah, that's how I kind of always look at things. It's just there's something in it, a skill or something from every experience you're going through, and take it into your toolkit and just one foot in front of the other.
Absolutely. Show up, chip away, one foot in front of the other. I love that. We are up to the 6 quick questions part of the episode. Some of them we might have covered already, some of them we might not have, but we ask them all the same and it goes into part 2 of the show. Question number 1 is, what's your why? Why do you wake up every day, show up every day, and build STRAAND?
I just love creating, and that's it. I love building things. I love creating. I'm a creative person, constantly thinking of ideas and how to do things. So yeah, just building something, making something, that's fun.
That is fun. I hear you. Loud and clear. I'm the same. Question number 2 is, what's been your favorite marketing moment so far?
I have loved Sweat. That was great. I did really get a lot of joy out of our Christmas campaign. We did a hair gem machine and we sent it to a lot of people. But within sending just the hair gem machine, we tried to facilitate a journey, and we did little cards, which was like, pick your main character. And it was like, main character moment, this is how you activate. Y2K Muse, this is how you activate. So I kind of wanted it to be like a little experiential journey. And then everyone wore it to like festivals and fun things. And I felt like over Christmas, people ask a lot of people, and I just wanted to try and insert moments of joy after what had been, a pretty hard 2 years here in Melbourne.
100%. God, I love that. Love the hair gem machine, by the way. So cute. So fun. Question number 3 is, what's your go-to business resource if you have to think about something that you're kind of turning to at the moment, be it a newsletter, a book, or a podcast, where you are getting value from?
I would say my colleagues at the moment. I go through phases where, I'll read everything from the 4-hour work week, Sell or Be Sold, The Art of Creative Thinking. I'm not in that reading phase at the moment. I think I'm a bit exhausted, but I'm learning so much from my colleagues and from the environments that I'm putting myself in.
Yeah, absolutely. I think network and the people you surround yourself with and the people who you can tap on the shoulder is just like fundamental, especially when you're building a business, but in life too. Having those conversations, even if you don't have colleagues that are working side by side, going out and finding a network and building people that you can building connections with people that you can tap on the shoulder.
100%. Like even peer-to-peer, people doing the same stuff as you. And that's a big thing even like in my team, and I really, really encourage, Emily's our only affiliate manager. So make relationships with other companies and other people with affiliate managers, similar with Anna and TikTok. And it's been great because some of the founders I'm connected with, we've connected them with their peers within their business, and you grow at such an accelerated rate if you have that support network.
Yeah, absolutely. Question number 4 is, how do you win the day? What are your AM or PM rituals and habits that keep you feeling happy and successful and motivated?
I try to be good, but sometimes I coffee. I do listen, and this probably sounds a little bit silly, but if I find I'm in a bit of a rut, and I do need that extra perk, I listen to a lot of sleep stories, mindful brain rewiring meditations whilst I'm sleeping, and I'll do the same on my morning walk with my coffee. I'll listen to like words of affirmations, balloon beats and stuff like that.
Where do you go to listen to these sleep stories? I want some sleep stories.
They're so good. I listen to a guy on YouTube called Michael Seeley. My partner's really funny. He listens to like Harry Potter sleep stories. It's bizarre. But these are like meditations. I didn't know that was a thing.
It's a thing.
These but Michael Seeley's meditations, you can just do them on YouTube, and depending on how you're feeling, like you can choose, like if you're feeling a bit anxious or overwhelmed, if you want to be in abundance and gratitude, you can kind of pick which one you're resonating more with, and then I fall asleep to them. And then in the morning on Spotify, you can find some really great playlists that I can share some with you.
Yes, please do. I would love to see what you're listening to. I want some sleep stories. That sounds so cool. Thank you. Question number 5 is, what's been your worst money mistake so far, and how much did it cost you?
I am wasting a lot of money on air freight at the moment, and that's killing me. And that's timeline. But is it a mistake, or is it just like a nature of what's happening? And like you plan as best you can, and like, I was meant to have something delivered last week. It's still not delivered. So air freighting is costing a lot of money that I would prefer not to be spending.
Yeah, absolutely. We could all agree on that. And last question number 6 is just, what is a crazy story, good, bad, or ugly, from your journey in building this business?
Oh, the color orange. That was a nightmare. Originally did some kind of early branding identity stuff, and we'd settled on orange. We're like, yeah, we want to be orange. But then all the color chips kept coming back, and it was like cheeseburger, McDonald's orange, and then it was this other orange. And every time you get a color chip, it's 6 weeks. So the rest of my team are come again. It's when you send away to get a color chip match so that your vessels, you get to proof them first. But to get that color chip, by the time it goes to a supplier, it takes forever. Anyway, there was one that we kind of landed on, and I used to always love this lipstick called Lady Danger. And it was this really beautiful, like red, orange. You can tell I worked at MAC and I'm obsessed with it. And this color where we were just didn't have enough of that red, and it was haunting me, and everyone else was like, we've gone too far, there's no changing it now. But I convinced them, and we ended up changing it, and now we have our beautiful Strand orange, and the rest of my team, I think Tim and Jeremy in particular, like, it's orange, like this does not matter. And I was like, it matters. And then now they're like, it matters, it really mattered. And I was like, it really matters. So yeah, that was a fun journey.
I know. Oh my God, I love that. The orange story. This was so fun, Meagan. Thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your story with Strand and where you guys are at right now. I'm excited to circle back and do a part 2.
Me too. I'm really excited. Thanks so much for having me. It was so fantastic seeing you yesterday.